Kevin Yates here, Stronger Over 50. So if you're wondering how to fix shoulder pain when nothing you've tried works, the first thing you want to do is focus on improving the quality of movement at your shoulder. And I'm going to share with you 3 techniques that you can use to help you do that so that you can fix your shoulder pain and get back to doing the things that you enjoy doing. So the first thing we want to understand is that we want to focus on improving the quality of movement, like I said, first and foremost, before we do things like trying to strengthen the muscles. So, if you're watching this video, you've already done strengthening exercises and stretches and all those things. But the reason why the mobility is important to do first is because most of the time, before pain goes away or before pain decreases, we get improvements in mobility. So when I share these 3 techniques with you, just be on the lookout for that. You might do these techniques and, one or some of them might not make the pain go away, but you might get an improvement in your shoulder movement, right? So if your mobility increases, then you're on the right track, because remember, improvements in mobility tend to happen before decreases in pain. You might also have a situation where you don't really improve your mobility, but maybe you can move yourself, you can move your shoulder through a certain range with less pain than you had before. So again, that can happen too, right? And if that happens, then again, you're on the right track with it. So be on the lookout. Don't just expect to do one of these techniques and then your pain automatically just goes away. Improvements in mobility, we're definitely looking for. We're looking for the same mobility that you had with less pain, or the best case scenario, improvements in mobility and the pain goes away. Hey, it can happen too, but just kind of keep that in mind. Okay, so the first technique we're going to use is manual sensory stimulation. So to do this technique, you need something soft. You can use something like, I've got like a soft ball here. You can use a tennis ball. You can just roll up like a small towel or a washcloth. Don't use your fingers, right? Use something soft, obviously nothing that's gonna hurt. So all we're gonna do is we're gonna take, what you got, and we're gonna do some manual sensory stimulation, right? By moving all around the shoulder. So all around the area of the shoulder. Now, before you do this, we're going to do 2 things. One, we're going to make sure that you don't push on any areas that are like really painful to pressure, okay? So if you have a certain area, you put pressure on it, it's like, oh, that hurts. Stay out of the pain zone. Just work all around it. Because if you drive pain in there, what it's going to do is it's going to trigger a response from the brain and nervous system to tighten all the muscles up and restrict movement. And then, so you get decreased movement and more pain. So we don't want to do that. Second thing is that before we do any of these techniques, you want to have a baseline assessment. And what that means is that you're going to do a certain movement. That way we can test out what happens after the technique that we use, okay? So for the movements, you can take any movement that you have trouble with, maybe movements that are either painful or that you're limited on. So, it could be an arm raise up here overhead. Don't move through pain again. If you have pain, just, go as far as you can comfortably, and then that'll be where you're at. So you can do that movement. You can do your arm kind of from out to the side and up, or you can do just a simple kind of external rotation here to here. So whatever one it is, you can pick one of those. You can pick something else if you need to. And so what we're going to do is do that movement, test it out, and then we're going to do the sensory stim. So we're just rubbing on the area all around the shoulder. So again, stay out of the pain zone. You can rub faster, you can rub harder, you can rub slower, you can do straight lines when you rub, you can do circle patterns. It doesn't matter. Whatever feels good and comfortable works. Okay, so after you do that, repeat your assessment. So whichever movement you did, and remember what we're looking for: improvements in movement. Did you move better? Did you move further than you did before? Or do you have the same movement? It didn't really improve, but you have less pain. So either of those is a good sign. All right, and if that's what you got, then great. This is a drill that you want to keep using. Now, if it didn't really work, you can try the next drill, which is basically what we're looking at is identifying the linchpin in your shoulder mobility. And so what I mean by the linchpin is it's like focusing on the one area that if you focus on that area and you work on that area, it makes the biggest improvement in your shoulder movement, right? And or decreases in your shoulder pain. So a lot of times what we think is that because we have pain in the shoulder, we automatically think that we need to do exercises for the muscles of the shoulder, or we think that it's a problem with the shoulder itself. And that's not always the case. And especially if you have like chronic pain that just, never really goes away. It just kind of came out of nowhere. You've been struggling with it for a long time. It's reproducible with certain movement that you do. Like, oh, every time I do this, I feel it in that same spot, sharp kind of, that kind of pain. So it's rarely the case where the shoulder is the actual cause of the problem. That's just the area where we feel it because that's an area that takes on a lot of the stress. And that can happen because of a lack of mobility in other areas of the body. So here are some of the possible areas that you can look at identifying and working on these areas, like working on improving movement in these areas and testing out with your baseline assessment you did in the last technique, and seeing how it works. Does it improve it, okay? So some other areas that you want to look at can be like the shoulder blade itself. So in order for the shoulder to move well and to feel well, the shoulder blade has to move with it. The shoulder blade is like the foundation for your shoulder to move. So the humerus, which is the upper arm bone, it fits into that kind of, it's like a ball that fits into the socket, so to speak, and that's what the shoulder blade is. It's like this socket here, and the upper arm bone fits right in there. So when the shoulder's moving, the shoulder blade has to move with it. And sometimes what happens is this shoulder blade gets stuck and doesn't move, and the shoulder's trying to move, and it creates stress and wear and tear in that shoulder joint and causes pain. So shoulder blade is one of those areas. The thoracic spine. So basically, if you look at the top of your shoulder blades, like right from about here where my finger is, and right above where the low back starts, so somewhere like around here, between these 2 points, that whole area of the spine, that's the thoracic spine. And some parts of like some degree of shoulder movement, shoulder mobility, can only happen when we have good movement and extension in our thoracic spine. Here's the problem. A lot of times, we are sitting at a desk all day on the job, or we're driving, or we're on our phones or on a computer. And what happens is over time, the more that we're in those postures, and look, if you're in that kind of position in those postures for like all day, what happens is your brain and nervous system start to kind of eliminate the other movements. So instead of you being able to get up tall and open your body up and shoulders up and move in all these ranges that we're supposed to have, you get locked down because you're always in this position, and the brain says, okay, this position is important. This is where we operate day to day. This is where we need to be. So we're just going to kind of down-regulate all other movements that happen outside of this position. So your brain drives muscle tightness, right? The brain controls everything below the neck. Basically, everything above the neck controls everything below the neck. And so the muscles get tight and you get stuck in these positions. And you can stretch those muscles out all you want, and you might feel better for a little while when you stretch them out, but then it's like, a couple of hours later or the next day, boom, you're right back in that same position. You still got pain, you still don't move well, and no matter how much you try and stretch the muscles or do strengthening exercises, it's like you never really get any better and you still have that pain. And that's because the muscles do not override the signal from the brain that keeps those muscles tight. So instead of just trying to stretch muscles, we've got to go above the neck and work and look at things like sensory stimulation and things like identifying linchpins that can help to unlock those tightness patterns that we have so that we can improve our movement and decrease shoulder pain. So T-spine's an important one. You could try a little test with this because this will kind of help illustrate the point I'm trying to make. If I am in this position all day, like at a desk, and I'm like that, then what happens is when I try and lift my arm up, this is as high as I can go, and that's me trying to force it, okay? So look at how high my arm comes up. Now, I'm gonna just straighten myself up, pull my shoulders back a little, get my thoracic spine nice and extended, and now look at the mobility I have. So thoracic spine has a lot to do with shoulder mobility. So if yours is stuck, that could be a linchpin area for you. So some other areas to look at are things like the lumbar spine, our lower back, and our pelvis, right? If those are stuck, then a lot of times the shoulder has to overcompensate and it has to move in ways that it doesn't want to move, and it takes on a lot of stress and wear and tear for the lack of movement at the lumbar spine and the pelvis. It could be the hips. We can have knees. We can have ankle issues going on. So again, identify, which one is your linchpin, because a lot of times there is one area, and sometimes it might just be a couple of different areas or a few areas that, if we work on these different areas, a little work on each of these areas can make a big difference, like a cumulative effect, right? So that's our linchpin mobility strategy. And then our third technique is something that is an applied neurology technique. Real quick, if you are enjoying this content and you are a man over 50 who is struggling to achieve your health, physique, and performance goals because of chronic pain and nagging injuries that keep getting in the way, then you might want to check out my Stronger Over 50 coaching program. It is for serious men only. So if that's you, then check out the link in the description box below to apply. Called muscle mapping. And basically what muscle mapping is it's a way to clarify our quote unquote movement map in the brain so that we can move the shoulder in all the ranges that we're supposed to be able to move. But a lot of times we lose access to those movements because of pain that happens, right? And so, or because of disuse. We get stuck in those postures again. We don't use certain movement patterns. We don't open ourselves up enough, and the brain shuts off access to that movement blueprint. So we get very stuck and limited with the movements that we have, and we get pain. If we're looking at the shoulder, we want to do muscle mapping for basically like the upper back. So it's kind of like upper and mid back area, and that'll help to kind of clarify all that movement. That we might not have access, or like I said, we've lost access to. You might be wondering now, how do I do muscle mapping? Like, how do I perform it? So if you want to know that, then be sure to check this video out, and I'll see you there.